Yeah. Good morning. I know we're still sorting out the chocolate auction and everything. So, can everyone hear me? It seems a little okay. There's just a lot. Okay. So, welcome to Channing Unitarian Universalist Church, especially today for our chocolate auction later. It's finally happening after a snow delay. We're glad that you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation or gender identity, You are welcome to worship here and become a part of this community. I just want to call your attention to the insert in your order of service. There's a lot coming up in March, and this isn't even everything. There are a couple of things I forgot, but I ran out of room and didn't want to go multiple pages. So just for immediate heads up, next Sunday after from 4 to 6 p.m., Sweet Wednesday, they've been a open road coffee house performer, are putting on a Mardi Gras party here in Howland Hall. Proceeds from that part of those are going to Channing Church, and part of them are going to the Rockland Food Pantry. So it's free, but we're posting up a suggested minimum donation per family of $15. And then the coffee house is coming back on the 8th with the group So Blue, that's partially made up of members from, Amber Wilds was their old name. Pretty Sarah. So at least one or two of the members of So Blue came from Pretty Sarah. Are there any other announcements? Julie?
So next Sunday, March 2nd, Judy will be back with us, and it's also going to be New Member Sunday. So if for the folks who have been coming regularly for a while, if you're interested in, we call it signing the book, because that's literally what you do, you sign membership book. But if you're interested in becoming an official member of Channing Church, that's the day that we do it with some pomp and circumstance. If you aren't there yet, that's fine. There's no pressure ever to join Channing Church. But if you're curious as to why that might be a thing you want to do, in addition to becoming a part of our spiritual community, which anybody can participate in, member or not, being a member lets you participate in the governance of this organization. That's really important because we are autonomous. We run this place ourselves. I'm sure you've seen the very busy volunteers that are going to meetings and making things happen and putting on events and making decisions. That's all because we're members, and members have the ability to do that. So membership gives you voting rights. Membership allows you to serve on committees that make important decisions. Of course, anybody is always welcome to share their opinion or help out at an event, but if you want to really have a say in what we do here and how we do things, becoming a member is how you achieve that. There is no commitment required. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to attend any minimum number of services. You don't have to serve on a certain number of committees, although people will always joke that you do, but that's really not true. It's no commitment to join other than a desire to join. If you decide later that it's not right for you and you want to rescind your membership, there is no punishment for that. You can come in or out as you please. This is not a high demand sort of organization. So if anybody is interested in joining officially, please come see me or Rick after the service, or you can always send us an email and we'll make sure that next Sunday when we do that you'll be included. For folks who have only started attending, we do this every year. We don't want to put any pressure on anybody who's only been coming for a few weeks or a couple of months to feel any sort of pressure to join. You don't have to ever if you don't want to, but if it's something that interests you, but this isn't the right time, we will do it again next year. Or even if in the middle of the year you decide you want to join, just let us know. So I wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Deb?
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that the Chinese dinner in Raffle will be coming up in March. It's the 29th, I believe, Saturday. Mm-hmm. And it fills up quickly. There's limited seating. So we have a sign-up sheet out the first week of March. And has to be paid for, you do reservation, preferably. And if anybody has any auction item, raffle items, if you're not sure about what they can be, you can see myself or Aaron after the auction today.
Mhm.
And then you can start bringing those items in, and we'll keep track of them to put out the raffle.
Any other announcements? Michelle?
Question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry, there will be many emails in the future.
Any other announcements or questions? Okay, then I will turn the pulpit over to our friend from Weymouth, Reverend Barbara Mills.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning, everybody. Always good to see you. What a nice turnout today. I'd like to tell myself it's because of me, but I know it's because of the chocolate. And that's perfectly fine. My husband found out that it was going to be chocolate Sunday. And he said, oh, you got some money with you? I said, yes, I have money with me. And he said, does that mean you might? I said, yes, I will bring home some chocolate for you. So you're not the only ones who want chocolate. He does also. The reading this morning is from a man who you may not know his name, but you know what he said. And it was pertinent about 80 years ago, and unfortunately, it still is. And the gentleman's name is Martin Niemöller. That's Moeller. I think that's how you say his name. And he was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany back in the 20s and 30s. And originally, he sympathized with the Nazi ideas and he supported the radical right. But once Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933 in Germany, Niemöller became an outspoken critic of Hitler's interference in the Protestant church of which he was a member. He spent the last 8 years of Nazi rule from 1937 to 1945 in Nazi prisons and concentration camps. Niemöller is perhaps best remembered for his post-war statement, which we will say in a moment. There are several different versions of what he said. Some people ask why that occurred. And it happened because he often made his statement in front of crowds that he didn't think he was going to be speaking in front of. So he would gear his tone and his words to the group to which he was speaking. But the version that is the most famous is the following one. And it says, first, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I did not attend a rally last week, Monday, in Plymouth, but my sister did. I had another commitment that I could not break. She said it was very supportive and exciting to see so many people standing in the bitter, bitter cold down in Plymouth Center and supporting the anti-dynasty, shall we say, that may be brewing in our country. And I plan to attend one next week. So maybe it's time for us to start to speak out, those of us who might feel differently than some of those in the current administration. Just a thought, something to consider. Now is the time for the lighting of our chalice. And Rick, I think you're going to be doing that. And as he does so, would you join with me in saying our words that are in your order of service? Oh, it looks like the kids are helping out today. Awesome.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you this microphone.
This one.
Would you stand as you were willing and able?
Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage and our chalice of community, let us open to the presence of the sacred.
Now the affirmation, please.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, thus to be covenant with each other and with God.
Thank you. I love it when we can see our next generation coming forward. Our first hymn is in your hymnal, of course, number 347, and it is called Gather the Spirit. Would you join with me as you are willing and able and stand for our first hymn, number 347. Please be seated. And now, because the kids are here and because we're excited to have them here, I have a little tiny sermon just for you guys. Do all the kids want to come up? Or are you happy where you are? Happy where you are. That's okay. First of all, it's very, very nice to see you all this morning. Don't get to see you very often, and I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate you listening. Now, I have a question for you. You don't have to answer it, but I want you to think about it. Have you ever been scared of anything? I bet you have. Yeah, of dogs. That's one of the things I was going to ask about. Of a dog? The dark. Okay. I get scared of the dark too. What do you get scared of? Of ghosts. Ooh, yeah. They come out at Halloween, huh? Yeah. You know what I was scared of when I was a kid? Clowns. I know that they're supposed to be funny, but I've never found them particularly funny. And I'm not scared of them anymore. I just don't really care for them. But I think everybody, whether you're a kid or you're all grown up, like some of us are, or some of us say we are, we're still scared of some things. I just think it's part of being human. And it might be clowns, it might be the dark, it might be a dog, it might be. Oh, that would be very scary. Losing one of your chickens to a wolf or a fox. She does? Yeah. Boy, I would hate to see that. That would be pretty scary. Sometimes it's not a thing that we're afraid of, but it's an idea or an action. Because sometimes people can be mean to each other, right? Have you ever seen that happen? Sometimes someone is mean to us or to somebody that we care about. Does that happen sometimes? Yeah. And usually we're afraid to speak up because it's very, very scary to open your mouth in front of people who don't agree with you. But if you're ever in a situation like that, I want you to tell you that if someone's being mean to you or to someone that you care about, or even a stranger, that it's okay. It's even more than okay to open your mouth and to say, don't do that. That's not nice. You don't have to yell at them. I don't want you to hit them, although you might feel like hitting them, but you won't do that, right? But you might be angry, and you can use that anger to just say, don't do that. That's not nice. And I know that we all know what those kind of people are called when they're doing that. Do you know the word bullies? Yeah, a bully. We know what bullies are. We know what bullies do. And we don't like bullies, right? We can like the person if they're not being a bully, but we don't like them at the moment that they're being a bully, right? We just don't like that. So I'm giving you not just permission, I'm telling you it's a good thing to stand up if you see someone being hurt by words or by actions, just because they might be a little different. You don't get to do that. That's a wrong thing to do, and you get to stand up. Because you know how it's going to make you feel? Strong. Very, very strong. Do you have a question?
Yeah, when I'm watching my chicken race, he's being a bully to the other chickens because he chased them all around.
Do you think he was being a bully?
Yeah, I was hiding into a pet talk, but he did not want to.
Sometimes chickens aren't that easy to talk to, right? It's hard to reason with a chicken. Sometimes people aren't that easy to talk to. It can be hard to reason with a person, but give it a shot. What is your name? Edward. Well, Edward, I encourage you to keep telling that chicken that that is not a good thing to do and not a bully anymore. Good. Maybe you scared that out of him. Do you think so? Yeah. Some people just flap and flap. Yeah, they do. Well, I hope that you guys have wonderful classes today. And did you all bring your money? Did your parents bring money? Good. Okay. Then they can buy you chocolate today. All right. All right. I'll see you guys later. Shall we sing to our children? Thank you. It's always fun to have little ones here. They're cute. It's a good thing they're cute, right? We might not like them as much all the time if they weren't cute. And now is the time for our candles of joy and concern. I invite you to speak to your sadness, your sorrow, your concern, your joy, your jubilation. We will join with you in either celebration or commiseration. Sometimes it's a candle for both. Just raise your hand. Yes.
Family just got back from a visit to Huntsville, Alabama to see my parents. Also got to see friends from our 20s. Everyone's still alive, so that's good.
They're still 20. You're still 20.
He's still 20 sometimes. Yeah. We're all still 20 sometimes, right? Good, good. I'm proud of you. Good.
We just had 3 go up at the same time. Debbie. Go ahead.
Kind of joy for all the people who make the goods for the chocolate auction, and especially for Debbie and Aaron who have to wind it all.
I have a bunch.
Okay.
Our friend Corey lost his dad 2 weeks ago. Our friend Sandra lost her mother 2 weeks ago. Bill's cousin lost her son. And friends of ours, she lost her niece, 20-something, to suicide. But on a happy note, Sandra, the one that just lost her mother, found that out on Monday. Tuesday, she went into the hospital for a biopsy for breast cancer. It came out clean.
Okay.
The dad of an overdose and told with us it's going to be something that is more common than we know more people in recovery. And I went to the wake yesterday and the dress code was flamboyant. And it was nice to see, like, there were lines out the door, so it was nice to see such a strong outpouring of community and love for people.
A celebration of his life.
It was weird because we quoted that he feels that all the blue states are going to disappear off the map. That caused him a fair amount of concern.
I think it should.
Again, a little concern for all the federal workers who have lost their jobs in the mass layoffs. We have a number of friends who are working in the federal contracting world, so we're concerned that they're probably next.
Great.
I'm not sure. I think it's a concern. Like the way the things are, and like I just got my gender marker changed to not binary, and now they're saying that you can be like detained at airports or things like that. So concerns with that, and then I'm joy for all of the allies that are being loud with us, because this isn't just our fight.
I want to echo that and just add that I appreciate when things get really scary that the universe just gives us a little bit of hope and reminds us that there's people around us that support. Not sure if it's a concern or whatever it is, but just, I don't know, I find it hard to like speak up without oversharing. So I tend to end up being very quiet or very like not quiet. So when I'm like in like new environments, it's hard for me to like upbeat. So just giving me the strength to just be nice. And also joy that I found is
Thank you, everyone, for sharing this morning. It's a scary time. As I said to the kids, it's okay to be scared, but I think it is our obligation to act even in the face of that fear sometimes. And it's hard to know how to do it and when to do it. But I think once we open our mouths, sometimes we find power. It may be hard for any of you to believe that at one point I was terrified of speaking in public. I am no longer terrified of that. I'm sure many years of teaching and being a principal helped that. But I am no longer not afraid to do so. I like doing it because I love to see people's faces. I hated being around during COVID. I mean, I was glad I was around, but I couldn't stand not being with people. I didn't like Zoom sessions. I like this. It's good to hear people speak up and to speak out. And it's good that people feel comfortable in doing so, because that gives us all strength. And I'm glad that you found this place. I'm glad that we all found these safe places. It makes it okay to be alive. It makes it okay to be human. It gives us permission to be who we are. And that's a good thing. While thinking of all of those joys and concerns, I'm going to share with you from the hymnal, if you'd like to read it, number 637. I'll read it out loud and you can read it with me if you like. It's called A Litany of Atonement. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. And now is the time that we put our money, Spirit of Life. We had the offering next, but we can do Spirit of Life next. Would you like to? Yeah, we'll do Spirit of Life next. How's that? Hymn number 123 in your hymnal. It's also in your order of service. Maestro? Please stand as you are willing and able. Thank you. Please be seated. And now we will have our offering. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. This is your church, and this is how you support it. Please stand as you are willing and able, and join us in singing our dedication of gifts. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Please be seated. If you think you're doing a lot of singing today, you are. But I really like this next hymn, so we're singing it because I'm up here and you're not. How's that? Our next hymn is number 187. It Sounds Along the Ages. Would you stand? No, I think they want us to be seated. Would you remain seated? Don't you dare stand up. You sit right there and be comfortable. Thank you. And I love the passion with which Maddie plays. She makes me happy. The sermon today is called The Nightingale. Kristen Hanna, a contemporary American author, has written copious amounts of literature. By 2015, 10 years ago, the year The Nightingale was written, she had produced 21 novels and several short stories, and one was on the New York Times bestsellers list. I had read one of her novels before choosing this one for our book club at the Weymouth Church, and I enjoyed it very much. Although I'd read it many years prior, and I'd actually forgotten most of the plot and all of the characters' names. What I did remember was that I liked her style of writing. For me, if I cannot empathize with and connect with the main character of a book, it is of little worth to me. I have to feel that I could be that person or that I have known that person. I need to believe that the protagonist is a real person with hopes and dreams and shortcomings with which I can identify. If I cannot do this, regardless of the plot's strength, then I am lost. Well-rounded characters are real breathing people for me, not just made up figments of an author's imagination, nor of mine. For this reason, although not only for this reason, I selected the Nightingale as our choice to read that month and to mount a sermon on today. At the beginning of this novel, World War II is raging, and the Nazis are just about to invade mainland France. The year is 1939, and the village in which most of the story takes place is a little country hamlet called Caravo. Vianne Marillac is a young wife and mother who finds herself in the unenviable position of bidding goodbye to her husband Antoine when he is called up to serve in the French army to fight against Germany. Until this time, Vianne has erroneously hoped that there would be no invasion of her country. But as we all know, an invasion did occur, and Vianne and her young daughter, Sophie, are soon forced to share their beautiful yet rustic cottage with a young German captain who requisitions her home as a residence while he is stationed in their town. Now, here is where the story could have fallen into the pattern of so many novels. Vianne could have protested valiantly, yet finally succumbed to the romantic and erotic advances of the handsome and principled young enemy captain, setting the stage for denial and then angst, and eventually submission. All of the requisite sighs and tears and passionate protestations. Thankfully, Hannah is a better writer than this, and she did not fall into this trap. Is Vianne attracted to this man? Yes. Does she act upon her thoughts? No. Is she cold and starving and beaten by the ravages of war? Is Captain Wolfgang Beck scared and conflicted and trying to carry out unjust orders in an unforgiving regime? Is Vianne desperate to secure food and heat for herself and her young daughter, Sophie? Does Captain Beck hold Vianne's fate in the palm of his hand? Absolutely. Yet both she and he know full well the effects that bad choices might have on their tenuous truce, and they purposely never act upon their desires. Attracted as they may be to one another physically, both are in love with their respective spouses, his back in Germany, hers at war on the front. Both are terrified, lonely, and worn down. But because they are both decent people, they keep their own desires in check. Vianne and her younger sister Isabel lost their mother to illness not long before the war had begun. And until recently, Isabel, the younger sister, had been living with Vianne. When their father returned from World War I, he was a broken man, ravaged by the sights and experiences that he had endured, powerless to express his love for his wife or his two daughters. And because of this, both girls had been sent to live elsewhere when their mother succumbed to illness. And Vianne, only a young child herself, had been forced to be mother to not only herself, but to her baby sister Isabel as well, due to their father's inability to parent either child. Isabel had been placed in countless boarding schools in France in an attempt to bring stability to the troubled teen. But from each new facility, she had been tossed as a result of her wild behavior and inability to reform or conform. When bombs drop from the skies over Paris and much of France and caravans of trucks bring enemy soldiers closer and closer to their home, 18-year-old Isabel struggles to find a purpose for her life. She yearns for her father's love and direction, yet finds none. She hopes that her sister Vianne can love her as a mother should, yet Vianne is not her mother and has little time or patience for Isabel's antics or to address her failings or desires. When Isabel finds herself estranged from both her father and her older sister, she reaches out for love elsewhere, meeting Gaëtan, a young resistance operator who believes passionately that he and his countrymen can fight the Nazis from within France. Finally, Isabella believes that she has found her raison d'etre, and she seeks her purpose through this endeavor. While Isabel remains a resistance leader for the duration of the war, her operations are necessarily kept quiet. No one, other than a select few other resistance fighters, can know of her occupation nor of her duplicity. Because of this, both Isabel's father and sister believe that Isabel is lost to them, as they are all lost to one another. The father is unable to show his love to his daughters because of the stress he still experiences from his tour of duty in World War I and the loss of his wife when he returned. Vianne and her sister Isabel are estranged from their father and from one another. Vianne tries to keep her daughter Sophie and herself alive during the hardships of famine and terror, and to simply, quote, go along to get along. But when she loses her teaching job due to her association with her best friend, who is Jewish, she quietly becomes a resistor herself, secretly stowing away young Jewish children in an abbey to keep them safe from the concentration camps. In fact, she adopts her friend's son when the woman is taken away by the Gestapo one morning and decides to raise him as her own child. Both sisters, and eventually we learn their father also, lived duplicitous lives for many years in an attempt to save their children, their country, and their belief in freedom. Certainly, these characters are fictitious. Vianne and Isabel and their father never lived, but their stories do. In 1940, the Nazis swept into Paris. At first, those living in the French countryside convinced themselves that the Nazis would be satisfied with occupying the capital. But they soon realized as bombings and caravans of trucks and trains began to arrive in their own towns and villages, carrying in them German soldiers and later Gestapo forces, that this was not to be. Germany was determined to occupy all of France, but the French government had fallen with little protest and begrudging acceptance of Nazi rule. France appeared doomed to become a part of the Third Reich, and there was very little that ordinary people could do to combat this reality. But of course, we know that this is not true. It turns out that humans will put up with a lot just to stay alive. We will put up with hunger and threats and being cold. We will put up with enemy soldiers quartering in our homes. We will put up with fear and constant worry and ration cards and bombings and sorrow and intimidation and death. Shock and disbelief are the emotions most of those living in occupied France experienced in the first few weeks and months after the invasion. As time wore on, they began to respond to de Gaulle's and British attempts to urge them to resist the occupation. Some resisted openly and loudly in the streets, but it soon became apparent that the method of resistance most often resulted in beatings, removal to a concentration camp, or even death. Within months, French resistance had begun. Farmers, Catholic priests, nuns, business owners, teachers, shopkeepers, and students formed a loosely knit yet closely bound underground system of fighting the Germans while sustaining their personas of obliging residents under the new Vichy government put in place by the Nazis. Notes were passed, birth certificates and identity papers were forged, Jews were hidden, and parachutists from Allied forces shot down by German planes were housed and given safe passage to neutral countries. All of this was accomplished in an era when there was disputed mail service, almost constant bombings, few phone lines, no cell phones, and no internet. The risk was real, and if caught engaging in any subversive activities, the punishment was swift and certain. Torture, confinement in a concentration camp, and more often than not, death by starvation or rifle shot could be expected. For women, the dangers were even more terrifying, as rape and removal of one's children was a common response from the Nazis. In 2025, this wartime saga seems so removed from our daily life. While Americans suffered unbearable consequences from our involvement in World War II and subsequent conflicts, never have we known the occupation by enemy forces over a sustained time. Except for the British invasion, and I do not mean that by the Beatles in 1964. Prior to the Revolutionary War, more than 300 years ago, and then the bombing of Pearl Harbor and 9/11, our soil has remained safe from foreign invasion. There have been threats and even attempts to topple our government, but so far we have prevailed. Despite our many political, social, racial, and ethnic diversities, we have managed to remain one country under one government with borders intact. But what if this were challenged? What if we suddenly found ourselves facing invasion by foreign forces? Certainly 9/11 was one such attempt. I am sure that you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when that first plane hit the Twin Towers in New York. I was at home getting dressed for the day as I prepared to visit my ailing mother. My phone rang about 9 o'clock, and my mother asked me if I were watching TV. Apparently, a plane had just struck a skyscraper in New York City. I immediately turned on my TV in my bedroom, and coverage was just beginning, showing the impact of that first plane. Speculation ensued, in fact, about whether or not the plane had actually been a helicopter or just a small private plane on a tourist flight over the city. But within minutes, that theory was debunked. A second plane drove straight into and through the second tower, right before my eyes. I could not believe what I was seeing. Yet also, I recall that I knew immediately, on some level, exactly what was happening. This was not an accident. This was deliberate and real and terrifying. Later that afternoon, as more planes were involved and more death and destruction were occurring, my mother, who was dying from pancreatic cancer and would be dead in the next 6 weeks, turned to me and said words that I will never forget. "This is your Pearl Harbor. You and your children will live with this forever." Truer words were never spoken. I will forever recall the confusion, the terror, the uncertainty of that day. When the bombing at the Boston Marathon occurred, I experienced the same feelings that I had on 9/11. My daughter and several of my nieces and nephews were in Boston that day, some of them at the marathon and others at the Red Sox game. The same panic overtook me, the same terror, and yes, the same dread. When I finished the novel, The Nightingale, I sat quietly for a bit, reflecting on what I had just read. For sure, the book was a tale of sacrifice and survival, bravery and betrayal. It was a fictional story about characters who could have been real, who suffered unspeakable losses and profound sorrow. The characters were just that, but the tales were all too believable, ones that uncounted people have experienced. Vian, the protagonist of this novel, now a widow and in her 80s at the end of the book, shares her knowledge about the world in the last few lines. She says, "I know what matters, and it is not what I have lost. It is my memories. Wounds heal, love lasts, we remain." What if we had been French citizens in 1939, living our quiet and safe lives on a small farm in a peaceful village? What if invaders attacked us? In a recent Netflix series that my husband and I watched, the scenario plays out in the United States. In The Man in the High Castle, the good guys didn't win World War II. Nazi Germany reigns over the eastern half of our United States, and the Japanese Empire rules the West. We are living in 1962 under foreign rule. We are not the victors, but the oppressed. I find the series compelling, yet very, very disturbing. In this story, too, resistors to the new way of life plot, plan, and carry out subversive maneuvers to gain back our freedom and our democracy. I watched each episode with anticipation, but also with dread, knowing that the scenario could be true and is and has been for so many. I find myself thinking of the Ukrainians. Would I do what Vian and her sister do in the Nightingale? Could I fight intolerance and oppression, knowing that to do so might result in my demise and that of my family and my friends? Are there ideals worth fighting for? Our forefathers and foremothers thought so. Even though we often fall short of our goals as a nation, we still espouse to, and I believe strive toward equality, equity, and freedom. I fervently hope that this remains so, then that I am never called upon to act upon such beliefs. Would that I could be as brave as they. Janis Joplin once sang that freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Maybe this is so. Maybe this is how the French resistance felt, and the American colonists, and the undocumented families who cross our southern borders every day, and Jesus on the cross. Amen. I invite you now to stand as you are able in singing our last hymn, number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. And yes, you can be both at the same time. Please stand as you are able and willing. Could we sing the last two verses? There are two more. I know. Please be seated. Now is the time for the extinguishing of our chalice. Would you join with me? Stand as you are willing and able, and say together our unison words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And before we leave this sacred space, let us sit down and enjoy the lovely music from our own Maddie.